ready?
Yeah.
माइक नहीं चल रहा है
I can start or you can.
माइक नहीं चल रहा कह रहे हैं स्टार्ट करें
करो वैसे चल
Change my place.
लोगों ने कहा था रोक देना
चलता नहीं माइक
बंद हो गया. That's what you guys do with my PowerPoint.
So she used to make us. We used to cry. We used to tire. We used to tag along. We used to howl, to scream. And she used to
My PowerPoint.
make it a game.
just wait
It's not working.
And she turned that exercise into a game in such a manner that we used to walk 10 kilometers
बटन
walk
दबाते
both,
हैं
that we covered 10 kilometers. And that's what the beauty is. And once we used to reach, she used to ask us, did you count how many kilometers you walked? I said, no, 10 kilometers. That's what the beauty is. So you have to make the child understand and move away in such a manner that is unaware of the fact that is learning. You know the word learn. Learn should be for you. Learn should be for you as a teacher because you know what the concept is behind it. What you want them to learn is for you to understand. But what are they learning? They should not be doing that.
The one I was at last night was like this class.
And that is what place it is lovely. Use the resources. Even with a small safety pin, you can develop a game. Even with a small kitchen. For me, my experiment laboratory is like kitchen. Every concept is there in your kitchen. Do shortcut methods. Make them. See. Unless and until the child knows how to read, he will not understand the value of it. So even if he is eating the chapati, tell him to learn how to make him bake his bread just elegant. One has to slow down. And this is what happens. We know the importance of it.
Nobody's here.
Don't hold my son.
And I'm saying my sweater.
For me and my son.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's a cowboy. I have seen
The cameraman. He just went in. Let me just see the audio is not working.
Well, it's small. I was coming up with
Oh yeah. It's really cold inside, really hot outside.
Even 2 minutes
because the mic is not Microphone. Microphone is not working.
getting machine board so simple. I just say it. So simple. You have a car. Put it in your phone. I can give you yes. Thank you, Dad. What is going on?
I'm actually talking about this politically talking, so that's so he's good. How are you? Yes. Okay. And then
Thank you, darling. Vision is always preconceived.
They don't even know.
I अगर मैं कहूँ नियाग्रा फॉल्स so deep, so, and I showed a picture on the book.
Lava?
And then I showed documentary. I showed
Coffee round table.
Yeah, well, Mike, I know.
Yeah, I got it, but I already used it. Oh, we're definitely grabbing food after. That was on he was going to schedule a driver and all that, so I didn't even bother calling that guy. Sam is drowning without music. Oh, look at that. We got coffee.
Whether it is that message is good or bad or worse or painful, you will always remember that.
Okay.
Good. Very good. All set.
So, and the mic impression.
Mike, sorry, Mike.
2 minutes.
Make it feel.
You may
I
not
assume
be
there's
able
only
to
10 people in the room. Do you guys really need a mic?
No, but I think it's for the recording.
It's for the recording, they need it.
Making
I can make it look good. I'll just shout.
But the voice doesn't go
I can
under.
go endlessly. Yeah. I can talk for 12 hours. I have, as a curriculum psychologist, whenever I take a workshop, I can speak for
मना कर रहे हैं
घंटा तू मना कर रहे
भैया ने मना करा
कौन से भैया ने
जो लाइव कर रहे हैं 6 नंबर वालों में
भैया
अभी मत करना एक मिनट ले मत करना
I'm using this platform to share.
इधर रुक जा इधर
And that is what I think.
My daughter got married to this guy. His name's Harold. She divorced him 3 years later.
She gave her name back.
Yeah, it's like, just take it back.
खराब क्यों हो गया
Even I am learning so many things.
Yeah, I'm totally to
You want me to go first, so I'm going to give you a plug.
Shakeerah.
Shakeerah.
And then you go, so you know the song Shakeerah?
No, I don't want to.
Well, it's specific, she's Colombian, I mean, Shakeerah, she's Colombian.
I think she's a singer, right? Did she?
No, that was, no, that was in,
Oh, you're talking about Steve?
no, not Selena, the one who died of passion from Haiti.
Yes, or Bahamas, I call her.
It was just several years ago.
Was she a rapper or a singer?
She was a singer, but she also did vocals for some projects.
Oh, Aaliyah. Aaliyah. She was,
No, yeah, exactly. I think she just did vocals occasionally.
yeah, she was over there shooting the video.
Yeah, she was,
Yeah, beautiful.
yeah, she was,
sorry but send me a note
I'm sorry.
let Mike know
No, Mike? Oh, man, whatever.
Well, because they told her that they couldn't fly her back because
Should we just stand here?
सर ये सेंटर ही होता है
They said no, and she
Yes,
kept,
yeah,
she
we'll
found
go.
another company, and then she asked them somebody to even, you know, so this other company.
I'm gonna have to be, so.
I think so.
Nick sir बना
Well, all set?
okay
Okay. Well, welcome. My name is Dr. Sam Stryker, as the, thank God it finally works, board says. I'm here to talk about sociocultural decision-making across cultures. So I'm talking about between countries and whatnot. As I said, my name is Dr. Sam Stryker, and for the last 8 years or so, I've been in and out of Afghanistan and a little bit of Iraq. So I sort of specialized by default in conflict areas. Did a lot of work, when we talk social science, we talk about a lot of different themes. So I did a lot of work in various themes, and you'll see those later on in the presentation. Currently, I've been working closely with the Ministry of Education trying to build their capacity and their analytics. Working with NATO has actually forced me to write a book. The book is for the command and command staff and trying to get them to utilize socio-cultural information in their decision-making processes for the benefit of, obviously, the populations they're there to protect, but also for themselves. And I'm going to be my own slide jockey here.
Can I help you?
If you like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's something missing out of there. Okay. So when we talk social science, there are about 13 things. However, in conflict areas, there are really 3 things that matter: security, education, and commerce. These things deal directly with certain vulnerable population types. So I view these as 3 of the most necessary things to address when dealing with sociocultural work. Okay? Now, everybody asks me, well, what does it take to be effective? It does not take somebody who happens to have a PhD in that area of the world. It does not take someone who has an international relations degree. What it takes is someone who has, and you went ahead, somebody who's a systems thinker, who's able to see the different circles and how they interrelate. How does security affect commerce? How does corruption affect all 3? How does education enhance leadership? That kind of thing. So that systems thinking approach. Okay? Qualitative and quantitative analysis is very important. Unfortunately, this does require an advanced degree, usually at the PhD level, where you get qualitative and quantitative study experience. And lastly, the ability to convert your information into information your client can use. It doesn't matter who your client is. It can be a diplomat, it can be a humanitarian effort, it can be a military, it can be the State Department, it can be anybody. They all ingest information different ways. Military likes 1-page memos, okay? Academia likes 106-page dissertations, okay? Things that'll drive us nuts. So we have to figure out the method in which they easily ingest information. And then we have to speak to their particular request for information. What exactly did they want to know? Did we answer it? And did we give it in the format that they can take to their fusion cell meeting, their corporate meeting, their committee or whatever, and have it influence their decision making? Nothing is more frustrating to me as an applied scientist as giving good information and having it not listened to by anybody, especially in a conflict area where you probably put your butt on the line for that information. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's an example of some of the demographics of Afghanistan. Now, I will tell you this, the demographics are skewed because there has been no real census in Afghanistan. Okay? The UN did try to attempt to collect the census, but they were unable to do so for a variety of reasons. So, as you can see, as a social scientist collecting information, demographical information in this case, we look at populations, we look at religions, we look at urbanicity, you know, how much of the nation is poor, how much of the nation is affluent. We look at literacy rates, we look at unemployment. Okay? So why do you think I slid into teacher mode there. I highlighted the red because they represent vulnerable populations. Now if you'll remember the 3 circles, education, commerce, and security. So those demographics, if they're red, they contribute to a vulnerable population. We have to be quite careful about that. So this is the beginnings of sociocultural research. Next slide, please. Now, when talking about culture, it can manifest itself in different ways. The sports of the country, the leadership of the country, Ashraf Ghani, the president, the way they conduct hospitality, Various things. When we talk about culture, we're talking about a very large mega topic. Okay? Next slide, please. So, when you're a social scientist and you're trying to understand the culture of an area and you quantify certain information, you get some strange graphs and charts. Okay? This particular chart is a profile assessment of a key leader. Okay? You create the rubrics, you measure on whatever scale you determine to be fair, and you report on that. You get bar charts, you get GIS type information. Next, please. Okay. You get Venn diagrams. You get link diagrams. You get all kinds of ways of information. One more. You get processes. This is the process of the customs at one gate in Afghanistan-Pakistan border area. This is the Friendship Gate. As you can see, it is quite involved. However, in order to understand where corruption is, you have to understand the system first. Then you have to understand the culture that drives that system. Next. And the reason why is to avoid the mistakes, the massive mistakes. Now, I put 3 massive mistakes up here that were made. Okay? An alliance with Pakistan, that's not really an alliance. That was a mistake. The imposition of democracy. The assumption that democracy is the best form of government for a certain culture without understanding what that culture's current form of government is or what worked best for it. And this thing called the unity government in Afghanistan, where we decided in order to keep certain people happy, we would split the leadership. Now, if you're a CEO or a head of a company, and I know some of you are, there's no way you would tolerate that. You can't diffuse a power source and expect it to be effective, and expect it not to be, corrupted. Okay? So we try to avoid the massive mistakes. Okay? So one of the big things that people ask me about Afghanistan is, I want to help. How can I help? If you were to ask me this, I would say don't. The corruption is too great. The issues are almost insurmountable. Don't waste your money. However, I qualify that now because there are a couple of initiatives that are very, very effective in Afghanistan and that are run without corruption. One is CyberPass. Okay? This one puts computer systems, solar power computer systems in very rural areas along the Afghan border. Okay? As if you'll remember, I'm hitting one of those red targets, literacy rates. I'm also hitting messaging. When you hear only one message, that's what you believe by default. Now you have, good timing. Now you have the source. Now you have different sources of information, so you can critically think, do I believe this newscast I just read? Or do I believe what the Taliban just sent me on SMS? Okay? The other is National Women's Day. In the East, this is a big deal. Very traditional, very set in the ways, not gender equality in the least. However, there are initiatives by an organization that have created a National Women's Day, and people from the First Lady on down, that includes international personalities, have been participating in this. This is run by the individual seated right here who decided not to show, so he can still hear about it from me later. But if he does show up, he'll be able to field some of your questions. So that's my brief introduction. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague for hers, and then we'll open it up for questions. Shakeerah?
Hello. How's everybody doing today? Good. I don't normally speak really loudly, so I'm trying my best. That's a hard act to follow, although my topic today is very much different or totally opposite of what was just discussed, which was great, by the way. Today, my topic was being the best you can be and broadcasting it. And the point of that is, how do we do that? How do we be the best we can be. So first, I'd like to share how many people in here are perfect. Raise your hand if you're perfect. No one, technically, is perfect in here. And so when it comes to being the best that you can be, the first thing is knowing that you are your own best. It's all about you and how you can get to a place where we have a beginning, we have an end, but what is in the middle? What is that dash? So we're born, and then one day we will expire out of this body. But what do we have to fill in with that dash? And the dash is the most important thing in your life, because we're all created to be with a unique purpose. We have our own identities, we have our own personalities, and being the best that you can be starts with you. A lot of times we have society to tell us who we are, how we should be, what we should dress like, but the most important key is that you're telling yourself every day, I am who I want to be. I can wake up and be who I want to be. The second point that I wanted to point out is today, normally we don't look at ourselves as a gift. So I believe that God has created all of us to be gifts. So if you ever had a holiday or birthday and you are taking your time to wrap a present for someone, we pick out the ribbon, we pick out the bow, we pick out what the outside of that box is going to look like. But the most important thing is what's inside the box. And part of that outside is you. You're outside, you have your makeup on, you look great, you smell great, you come out the house, you're confident, you're bold, but the inside is what truly matters. It is who you are, who you resonate to be outside of here. So one thing I definitely wanted to share is that the present is you. And every time you walk out, you're saying, I want to be the best that I can be. I want to give my all. If I want to get into politics, if I want to get into education, economics, who's stopping you? There's really no one to stop you to be who you desire to be. And that's the key. We have a working mic?
We can hear you.
But you can hear me perfectly fine, right? Okay. But there's no one to actually stop you from being who you desire to be. There is one thing that I do for myself is I work in a entertainment company. It's called Infusion Entertainment, and Infusion Entertainment is about infusion and merging reality with dreams. So my passion is to deal with actresses, people that want to be in film and television, and help them get to a place that's going to drive them. Some people don't know how to start. And so I deal with people, they work in the post office, they work in clerical positions, but one thing, they've always wanted to be an actress, they always wanted to dance, and some people give up those dreams. And so the point of being the best is to not give up on your dreams. I don't care how old you are. I know someone that was 70 years old and they didn't decide to become an actress until they were 70 years old because they realized after working 30 years, they weren't happy. They weren't doing what they wanted to do in life. And so either you're going to break out of the box and say, I'm the gift and I can do anything. I can sing, I can act, I can dance. And you don't have to worry about the pressure to put on because it's just you. So we live in a society where there's a lot of technology. We have cell phones. A lot of times we carry our cell phones everywhere we go. And my suggestion is we pay $50, $100 for your cell phone. Why not have your cell phone pay for itself? We all have a record button, right? So let's record ourselves. Whether it's just something that's on your heart to share and you want to empower someone else. Hello, okay. If it's something on your heart to share and you want to empower someone else to do it, whether, like I said, Infusion Entertainment, my company, is a company that's geared towards young adults from 18 to 31 or even more, or higher, and they want to do more with their lives than just go to school. I believe that education is great and college is great, but what if you're not meant to go to college? What if after high school and you get your education, you are supposed to, you have a passion, you know how to sing, you know how to dance, so why not show that to the world? And the world is waiting for you. A lot of times we don't do things because we think no one will be interested, or everyone's doing it, so why do I need to do it? But the key is you're not everyone. You're unique, so even if there's 500 writers out there, your story is the one that's gonna stick. Because your story is gonna help someone else with the same story come out of that box. And so the key to my message today is to get out of the box. Use Facebook, use Twitter, use the internet. There's so many free resources that we have that we don't have to pay any money for. We have, like I said, you have the record button, you have Facebook, you have friends, you can even have home parties. Some people don't think of just going to their neighbors and saying, I know I've lived here for 10 years, but I want to share with you what I have a passion about. And your neighbor could actually have the same passion too. But you haven't asked and you haven't opened up. So the world wants to see you for who you are. And giving your best doesn't mean I'm just striving to do what I'm supposed to do. It means that it's my best. And every day, and a quote that I live by is, it's not about being the best or doing the best, it's about being better than you were yesterday. And if you can wake up every day and say, I am better than I was yesterday, I'm gonna go after what I've always dreamed of doing, but whether I've had children or I have gotten to a place that has stopped me. We can all put our fears in front of us, but then there makes no room for a pathway to go through. So my message today is, be the best that you can be and do it with strength, with pride, with love, with your heart. And if you're doing that, then you have conquered it all. Thank you. And we would like to open up the floor for questions. I'm sure people have questions for Dr. Stryker or myself.
Can't leave without asking a question. That's the rule.
She has a question. Hi, my name is Palmy Deans. I'm from the UK. I run an NGO for. Hi, my name is Palmy Deans. I'm from the UK. I run an NGO for disabled children, young people, and their families. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is ensuring that the rights, inclusive participation of disabled children and people, whatever they may be, can progress, and which will also be of great benefit for them. One of the areas that we're also kind of very concerned about is asylum-seeking refugee children, and also in terms of places of conflict, because time and time again, they seem to be the invisible minority. And if we truly want to see the best of who we are, and we really want to see humanity at its best, surely it's that quote that's told time and time again, that we as a society are judged by how we treat our most vulnerable. So one of the things I'd really lovely to hear from you is when you're looking at it as a decision making and making the right choices, and obviously in times of conflict, a lot of people do get left with impairments, and there's also people already there who have probably been born with an additional need or various impairments. What processes are in place to ensure that they don't get left behind?
I think you think I'm a politician.
Yeah.
Speaking in Afghanistan, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's about 2 million refugees, external refugees, and I don't know how many internally displaced people, but the number is very, very high. I view them as hitting every one of those red categories. You know, low literacy, obviously lack of security, and almost no employment opportunities. So a very vulnerable population to be exploited, no doubt about it. So when it comes to refugee populations, it's, from a sociocultural point of view, it's one of the key things that needs to be addressed by whatever host nation we're talking about. It doesn't matter really which one we're talking about. Syrian refugees, Afghan refugees, Iranian refugees, it doesn't really matter which ones we're talking about. They all get put into, they all go through the same process. Okay? And I haven't even talked about the psychological impact. I often refer to Afghanistan as a nation of PTSD. Okay? Going back, when's the last time they had peace? 1978. They've been embroiled in some conflict for the last 40 years. That's 2 generations. Okay? To give you an example of the importance of a vulnerable population, Afghanistan is the largest demographic. Does anybody know what it is right now? It's the youth. It has been 17 years since the Taliban had control of Afghanistan. So what does a 17-year-old who's going to vote next year really know of the past? He doesn't really have any experience with it. So and this largest demographic is going to be selecting the leaders, the future leaders of Afghanistan. So things like that, we need to look at the implications. So I really can't tell you what Afghanistan's view is on refugee populations, other than that the administration has reached out to the refugees on Iran and Pakistan side in order to somehow get them in, because the unwanted refugees feel it from the host nation. The Iranian refugees, I hear stories of how they're oppressed, because the Iranians really don't want them there. They're a drain on the economy, and it's obviously it's a point of corruption. That's I'm sorry, that's about the best answer I can give.
It's just a good platform to kind of raise those issues, really get people to start thinking.
There's in Afghanistan, there's so many disabled people because of the decades of conflict. I think there's a ministry for the disabled, and if you work with any civil society organizations, it is always brought up. So it is one of the most vulnerable populations. But all civil society organizations, even those who work on other issues, it's a cross-cutting issue because it's such a severe issue in Afghanistan.
But it's about the resources, it's about the action. There's a lot of talk.
It is about the resourcing, but there's Afghanistan, the resourcing issue is larger. There's a larger issue on the resourcing issue where you're not having. The government itself tries to provide resources to the disabled, but they are also hamstrung by a lack of resources. And so you have a lot of aid agencies working there. But you don't actually have, it hasn't been the largest priority for the international community. So I think that's where the pressure point would be, is more with the less with the Afghan government and more with the international community to direct some of their assistance there. Because they're the ones who determine conditionalities and also where most of the international aid goes, whether it's education, whether it's security assistance, and so forth. So, can I ask actually a question?
Not a tough one. Go ahead.
Maybe a tough one. Thanks, it was a great presentation. Agree with all the major mistakes. Though democracy we could debate on a little bit.
Very little bit.
In the sense that, it's a process, but on social science research, and you mentioned that you need sort of the quantitative. I thought the slide you did on the customs agency and how to both on the customs process, and so you can see where there are leakage points in terms of corruption is very helpful. But I guess. So that one I have less of a question on, because it's, in terms of you're trying to deal with anti-corruption issues, you need to understand the entire process, who the people are, and so forth. But there's also been, you mentioned the issue of how do people digest information. And that's sort of where my concern lies on occasion, just because there have been some debates, let's say with the American Anthropological Association, whether or not you work with the military. How do you get your clients to digest the information so it's used in a way
Oh my
that
goodness.
most benefits the population. So it's not only sort of filtered through their own, well, it's filtered through, of course, their interests, but you can align those two interests.
So what's your
So I guess my question is there's been a lot of debate on social science research and the use of social scientists in the military, and whether or not, both in terms of the benefits of it, so that they understand the population better, but also in terms of the fact that on occasion, if the military doesn't digest the information appropriately, it could be used for, let's say, negative security targeting. Yes, high value targeting.
No, very good point. This is actually a question of ethics. I would not do what I do if it wasn't for the counterinsurgency doctrine that NATO's working under. That's Doctrine 23.3, I think it's called. Anyway, this stipulates essentially that the population is now the center of the focus, which means the population's welfare, which means now I can act as a social scientist. I can do no harm. I can't do analysis and provide you with a list of names for you to go kill because they're all bad guys, and the population told me they're all bad guys, and I know exactly who they are and where they're at. The military would love me to do that, but honestly, it violates the tenet of social science. So with the advent of this new doctrine, I can now, as a social scientist, assist the military to help understand the population. Green and white layers, the population and the government. The red layers, bad guys, and I leave that up to the military to deal with that. Now, do I come across it? Of course. We all know that insurgencies rely on the population for protection. They hide within the population, so I'm running into them all the time. Okay? But it's really not my lane, and unless there is an immediate danger to myself or to coalition forces or to the population, then I leave that up to a different entity, usually special forces or whatnot. The ethical question is often raised loudest by the AAA, the American Anthropological Association, of which I'm actually a member. Okay? However, this is an entity where I call them the 15%. No matter what your endeavor is, there's going to be 15% of the population who never agree with you in doing whatever it is you're doing. That's the AAA. Okay? I am a applied social science researcher. I do not I do not ascribe to just doing research for the sake of research and then writing a book and putting it on a shelf for other people to read it and maybe do research on that. In my mind, if I can do some good, protect some population, help cross-cultural understanding, then that is a noble application of my abilities. And it does not, in my mind, violate the do no harm tenet. Actually, I think it does the opposite. It prevents harm from being done to vulnerable populations, misunderstood populations. I can give example after example.
I guess the question I have is, when you communicate, do we need to communicate in different ways? Because I know that of course you conduct ethical research, but do you find the need to adapt to different when you communicate sort of your findings?
Yes, and when it comes to whoever entity gives me the request for information, they ingest information a certain way. The military likes what they call bluff, bottom line up front. They want bullet points, they want reasoning, they want a conclusion. That's it. Okay? If I was writing for academia, an entirely different story. They want something very different. Okay? In many cases, especially in conflict, time is an issue. They might not even want a written paper. They might want a PowerPoint. This slide, believe it or not, was very well received by the military. I looked at it and I'm like, man, they're not going to be able to understand it. And they're like, wow, that's wonderful. Look at that slide. It tells us everything. Like, well, okay. And of course I had to explain it to them because it is a busy slide. So understanding how your whoever's requesting the information, understanding how they ingest information is extremely important. And it's up there because, you know, if you're the CEO and you normally dictate things in memos and pass out, you know, policy changes in memos, you're going to want memos. Okay? So, and it matters. Some people like presentations. Some people like PowerPoints. Where there's something called a quad slide in military circles, where it's a slide split into 4 quadrants, and you cram as much writing as you can in each quadrant. It drove me nuts, but that's the way some people like that. So you speak their language. Just like when I'm going out and learning about the culture, I'm looking at it through their eyes. When I come back, the real difficult culture is often the military culture. So I have to kind of view things through their lens. The very, very difficult culture is the State Department culture, because then I view things through their lens and I give them what they want and they still don't do it. So it depends on who your client is. Let's say you're an NGO and you want to put a hospital in the southern Sudan. Very noble gesture, definitely could use it, but where do I come in at? Well, where are you going to put your hospital? I'll put it right there. I said, well, that's a Tuareg tribe. The Bedouins will get jealous and you'll just create more blood fluid. Well, I'll put it with the Bedouins. I said, you don't get the same problem. Well, I want to hire people locally. Well, do you even know the literacy rate of Southern Sudan? Are you going to be able to hire medical personnel locally? Even if you give them a great wage, you're just going to get an illiterate doctor. So there's so many socio-cultural implications that you have to take into account that are invisible to you, in my case, from the United States. So you have to understand the culture, use cultural mechanisms to create success, which means maybe you might have to sit down with tribal elders and come up with an agreement. Okay? And that agreement has to be in a term that they will accept and that is culturally binding. We like contracts. We sign contracts. They don't. Okay? So what is culturally binding to that entity so that when you do build that hospital, it won't be burned, or in one case, goats stored in it. It's used for medicine. So speaking the language, understanding the culture, I don't think is the best way. I honestly think it is the only way to really ensure success. Okay? And Afghanistan, I remember a while back, there was a gentleman who was going around building schools all over Afghanistan, and he was getting press because I was reading about it, and he was very proud of it, but the Taliban was like following behind him, burning every school that he built. So he got kudos for building the schools, but since it wasn't done in a culturally relevant way, a culturally acceptable way, they were being destroyed as fast as he could build it. Okay? On the other hand, my cyber pass buddy, when he goes out, let me see if I can find it. When he goes out to put these very remote computer labs, and when I mean remote, I mean it's a mud hut. On top of the hut is a bunch of solar panels. They charge batteries, and the batteries run the computers. Okay, it's hard to tell that from that picture. It looks like a nice little classroom, but it's not. It's in the middle of nowhere on the Pakistani border. However, when he goes out, he gets the correct permissions from the local tribal leaders, and the bindings are so strong in their cultural heritage that the Taliban won't even mess with these guys. They, in one case, I think they actually come in and use it, which is good, because now you've got the Taliban getting a different source of information too. So the gentleman in question has just walked in the door. No, you don't get to hide back there. So Z is one of the creators, founders of CyberPass and National Women's Day, and he's joined us. So if you have any questions, he can field those as well. Any other questions?
I have one. I work with people. I work with people inside the prison, and one of my main challenge is how this youth go back to the society, into the society, and how we can create some change without changing their culture, because I cannot impose my culture in their beliefs or their lives. So you're saying about how you can take a picture of the culture, like see how they work, how they think, and how we can use this kind of methodology to address to other, not like a culture, like a country, like Brazil, but like a community, because like the traffic in the communities, that is the biggest issue in Brazil. So how we can address like changing their lives, the lives of the youth, how we can create these dialogues to or take pictures of their culture, to create dialogues, to make to have us some notion of what we can offer to opportunities to change their lives.
Now, good question, great socio-cultural question, and we have the same question in America. How can we be more effective and decrease recidivism or repeat offenders? So when they come out of prison, they actually become functional members of society. So by definition, they're counterculture right off the bat. So there have been many ideas floated. What do we do? I think there's a Swedish model where I believe they have a lot of success, but they treat their criminals very differently. Their criminals actually get like an apartment to live in. That's their jail. But they're educated in there. They're taught a trade. It's almost like they're reprogrammed in such a way that when they leave, they have all the necessary skills to become a functional member of society. So does that mean, will that work 100% of the time? Obviously not. But I would dare say that if you started erasing some of those red categories, like employment in this case, that I'm kind of describing, or literacy, you give this person and make him more literate, make him more employable, or her more employable, there is certainly a less likely chance that we'll be seeing them again in the jails. Okay? So how do we do that? I certainly don't have the answers. As a social scientist, it would be a study all on its own. We'd go in and we'd see what are the mechanisms, first of all, that brought these people to the prison. Let's identify those. Can those be changed? Okay? What are the mechanisms that force somebody to be a repeat offender? And can those be changed? Oftentimes it might be simply, like say with a gang member, it might be simply when he's out of prison, he's relocated to another part of the country where he's no longer under the influence of said gang. So maybe that is all it would take. But I certainly wouldn't speculate without studying the problem from a socio-cultural point of view. Other questions? I think there was one back here.
Yeah.
Shout real loud.
Yeah, I can be loud. Excuse my ignorance if it comes across that way, but my knowledge of Afghanistan was the US wanted to rid the Taliban, so they went in and did that. Now, you say that to really solve the problem, that you need to sit down with these local communities over a handshake. In your experience, do the US do that?
No. They try in some regards, but it is not part of the process. It's more some rather smart individuals who have come to understand the Afghan population a little bit better, start seeing the benefit of utilizing these cultural norms to their benefit. Yet there's some famous examples of it. You probably heard the Marine who was, or Marine or SEAL who was injured, and somebody in a village took him in and protected him. You know, it wasn't because he particularly liked the person. It was because 4,000 years of culture of hospitality is very binding, and because of that, he was able to utilize what I call that social cultural pressure point to his benefit. There are many, many aspects of that. I use it all the time. You know, as a matter of fact, I relied more on the cultural imperative of hospitality to keep me safe than the military. And don't get me wrong, when I go out with the military, I'm in a big up armored thing, and they'll shoot at it. You know, I'll get shot at all the time, but nothing's coming through. But every time, and every single time, and I've probably been outside the wire 300 times, when I go with the permission of whoever I'm going to see, with a local person, and I dress locally, I never have any problems. So the culture is very important to learn about. Now, it's not just a handshake. There are certain mechanisms, there are certain processes that are understood in the Afghan culture, Pashtunwali. And these, if you understand them, and the counterpart understands that that's the language we're speaking on, the tribal elder or whatever, it can be a very effective tool. Z might actually be able to comment better than me. Would you like to say a few words on that?
Sure.
Z is actually from Afghanistan and creator of Psychopaths and National Women's Day.
Yeah. In addition to Dr. Sam Stryker, what he's explained, like, yes, we did that practically, everything through. And I would say that Afghans are, I mean, in the entire world, everybody loves the hospitality. That's true, you know. And I should be respected to all the countries that everybody has his own culture and everybody loves, you know, hospitality to do that. But I mean, our dignity is hospitality. And so if you see the history of Afghanistan, we have civil wars, starting from the great Alexander, all the way coming into the Russian war. And then, so all of these things happen, and every time we feel that somebody is enforcing us and trying to be not nice with us, then the reply is really, really bad. That's true. And I would say that what some of the people from international community that did very well, I mean, like, I'm not saying most of them, I say some of them, by the way, so just to notice that. So some of them that did very well, that they, like as Dr. Sam Stryker mentioned, that they went in civilian clothes. And it is, I would say that the culture said that if you wear the shalwar kameez that I have, no matter from what religion and what culture and what country are you from, this dress doesn't allow the person to shoot on you. Because you are considering, you know, one of the community-based person and from the area, and it shows your love with that country and you respect the culture, and that's why the Afghans, like I would say that, in another word I would say that if there is a lot of blood feud as well in tribal conflict that we have. So in case if an enemy or a person that killed my brother and he is just running away from someone and try to come inside my house and hide, try to request for protection, I would give him protection. Yes, that is called the top level of hospitality. Even I know that he murdered my brother. So I would give him hospitality as well as protection. Even if I get shot for him, I would be the first person to fight on the front door. So that is what I need to be doing, because he came to my home and requested for protection. That's what the culture said. And if it's in, yes, and then I should give him the safety. That's the culture of the country. So before I would like to go more to the top, to the middle, I would say that if you go to the Asia, into that region of Asia, I would say, whether Central Asia or South Asian countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, that tribal area. If you want, stability in the entire Asia or in the Western world, the international community needs to work and study this area very much, from closed eyes. And I would like to say that this is why we're saying that when somebody's saying like the U.S. government interfered in Afghanistan, or somebody's saying that the international community, the NATO forces interfere in Afghanistan, I'm saying that's wrong. I think you're just saying the wrong phrases, because why it's wrong, they came under the agreement of United Nations into Afghanistan. They didn't interfere in Afghanistan. We requested, the Afghan requested, that because the civil war was going on and more than 100,000 of people got killed, and especially the educated people, and all the kids and women are completely, become widow and they got killed and everything happened. And you won't believe that they would call him the dance of the dead body. That much bad thing happened in the Civil War. They were doing, like slaughtering people and putting it into the oil and then, close down everything, and then the dead body was shaking, then they were calling him dead body dance. So people were that much hopeless from Afghanistan that they were looking like, okay, no matter who's going to come here, but all we want is a peace and stability. And in fact, that happened. And of course, some people are, criticizing the U.S. government or international community like, oh no, the Taliban is still fighting. Of course, they are the other side of the case. So when we have an election in a country, of course, one side is winning and another one is losing. And another one, because it's a democratic world, they are well educated. They have violence even for months in the streets, They do protest. I don't think so there is a bigger democracy than in the U.S. ever, I will see. But look, after the election, what happened? So there is always opposition. But the problem is in Afghanistan is there is a lack of education. So people don't know how to show and react and show their disagreement. The only one way there are elements or investors that they are sitting down there and they see that as opportunity and give them a gun and like, this is your way of talking. And he is uneducated. He can't do a judgment between good and bad. So, but if he's an educated community guy, he's going to say, no, I'm going to go and protest. And I'm going to go and scream and yell and tell to the international community, because I would say Afghanistan is like a village in a district, and the world is district. And we are a village inside the district. And people shouldn't say that like some villagers would be, from the other villages, like I'm talking about other countries, when I'm saying other villages, they would be transporting through our village, If they get hurt, they're gonna hurt us definitely, But if they don't get hurt, their village would be also safe, and our village would be also safe. So we as Afghans consider as a part of the world, and like as a village of a district or as a city of a country, and with the entire world. And I think going back into the war zone with so much, like I would say Dr. Sam Stryker was there. And as he said, I think military is not the solution for that, I would say. What you need is to empower the young generation. We lost 4 generations. So the person who was 45-year-old, he's gone. He's not there anymore. Like 60, I would say 15% we would have that. That could be a warlords, not educated people. But the most is gone and they got killed. So what we have right now, the young generation. And the young generation is all, what they do is more about technology, about education, about competing with the world. And as I said, that Afghans are quick learners as others, you know, and they want to be part of this world. I mean, they're not a different, you know, world. So I would say that I'm really, really, again, thankful for the international community and everybody, like, they contributed, you know, into Afghanistan. Of course, it is a sort of, you know, a problem that goes on and goes on for a long time. Some people are saying Syrian war is a long war, and some people are saying this war. But I'm saying that Afghanistan is the most longest war anybody see ever. And it has the most casualties, but nobody account that because they think like it's peaceful, it's like that and that, but I'm saying like no, there is still war going on, but there is also improvement in development. And the hope that we have is the youth and the women. These are the two strongest things. And I would like to say that like Afghanistan is today very, very lucky that to have a person as a president who is a second thinker of the world, who is the most educated person in the earth, Dr. Ashraf Ghani. And he's not the one that he's just, you know, like, and he is, you know, be respected in Afghanistan. He wrote books and things like for other countries. And as well as his wife, which is, we call him the mother of the nation, you know, like the respected first lady, that these two individuals brought a big, big hope for Afghanistan, for the young generation. And as you see on the pictures, like before that you saw, I'm sorry, there's some other pictures, but as you saw on the pictures, like the first lady that visited one of the Pashtun areas, you know, like after 100 years. And she was welcomed more than the president was welcomed in the past. And that shows that how much the young generation, including some elders that they are educated and they know the value of the importance of these educated, you know, characters. So they welcomed her like the way that you see on the pictures, you know. And that, like every picture is a story, I would say. So yes, I can tell you that it's all about the two, you know, individuals that brought, even though they are facing so much warlordism, you know, there is so much people that are against them and stopping them, but they still work very hard, and their only hope is the youth and the international community and the women, which they are standing very strongly with them, and they prove that in the election. Like last time election, what happened was like, you know, like when the warlords were on one side and Ashraf Ghani, Dr. Ashraf Ghani was on the other side, and that was people were saying that no way, Afghan don't like peace. They like, you know, war. They want war, and that's how the warlords gonna win the election, you know. And when the results come out, it was Ashraf Ghani, you know, who won the election. And the youth and the women and everybody from Afghanistan mostly, they proved that they want peace and stability. So I don't think so there is a bigger proof than that like what the Afghan wants. Mostly people are like, they have a different, you know, vision, like, no, you know, Afghan wants war. That's absolutely, completely a very wrong, you know, thinking about Afghanistan. When I know when there is, we talk about Afghanistan, there is people are saying war or killing. It's just the media. It's just the media, and they're trying to make a hot story. But it is not that much. They don't get the development story. I mean, the computer center that you see the kids is over there, that are in the tribal area. And you can just imagine from their cultural, you know, dress, that it is not in Kabul or it's not in the city, it's on the orphan area where ISIS is right now operating. But still, these kids are saying, like, we will not listen to the threats of ISIS, we will not listen to the threat of Taliban, even though they threat their lives. And they said, like, we will do this and that, and they say no. Once we say no, that's no. So, and they decided into coming, and that's why right now we have more than 800,000 girls goes to school, and out of the 31 million population, and also we have, like, I would say more than 100,000 women are on job, that they work in government agencies and non-government and private sectors. So these are the stories that the international community needs to know about it. The people, I'm not talking about just some NGOs, I think the people knows about it. So I would say that, again, that I hope, like, in the next year that's coming, 2018, you see the better pictures more than that of Afghanistan, inshallah, and that would be, something that will be a close sign to peace and stability. Thank you.
So be careful of the questions you ask. You might get a 20-minute answer. But Z is obviously very knowledgeable, and the fact that he can put computer labs in areas where even soldiers can go attests to his ability to work within the culture and educate young boys and girls in areas that have never seen it before. So I can't tell you what it means to put a computer in those areas, because now the messaging, there's now another source of messaging, another source of news, there's now another source of literacy. It connects them closer to the rest of the nation and the government and the central. There's so many benefits that come with it, and it would be great to put more out there. How many do you have out there now? 14? 14. So 14 computer labs along the border. Next question.
Did you complete what you were going to say about previously you had thought that there was so much corruption that you didn't believe it was possible to create change? Well, that's what I heard anyway. And then you said, actually now I've changed your thought process. Can you just explain that a little bit?
My opinion 6 months ago, or about 8 months ago, was that the number one issue in Afghanistan that was holding them back was the insurgency, whether it's Taliban or ISIS or Al Qaeda or Jamia Islam or HIC or Haqqani, HIC or Haqqani, all of those insurgents. Now that I've actually lived in Afghanistan, in Kabul city for 3 months, with a friend of mine that actually Z set me up with, keep me safe, I now understand that the biggest impediment to Afghanistan is no longer, it is corruption. Corruption is keeping the military from being ready. Corruption is taking money away from the Ministry of Education, vast amounts of money. Corruption is putting incompetent people in charge. I use this example a lot, and I hope the newspapers run with it. The head of the NDS, is the only experience he has is a driver for a warlord. He drove a warlord around. Now he's head of the intelligence. So, and there's a lot more like that. So these positions of leadership require competency. When you have a Ministry of Education, you need a Ministry of Education that has at least experience and an advanced degree in education, preferably educational administration. Not you got the position because you had the biggest bribe or somebody owed you a favor. So that whole nepotism, favoritism, corruption, it's a very invasive culture, and it permeates all the ministries. I don't think any ministry is safe. I think they all have some aspect of corruption in them. So I view corruption as the biggest hindrance to Afghan success. Okay. But now that we know it, there are ways through it. Anybody else? Maybe we should get out of here. I think we're well over our time. Thank you. The other speaker left? Well, I have cards on the table, so if you have any follow-up questions, just email them.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So Susan,
Welcome, sir. Nice meeting you.
How do you have the ideas?
Thank you. Very
Oh,
much.
the cyber pass.
have you spoken?
Yes, yesterday.
How do you go?
Went pretty well. Actually,
Group photograph.
Innovation impression.
Group pic.
Want a photo?
Yeah, group photo.
You guys want to give me
Excuse me, group photo.
Group photo.
Take one with this one.
Yeah.
Lost your group.
That's great.
Oh, I see. I guess probably be on the website.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have to send that to me.
Yeah, so that's so we started we started the concept like this way that what are tools of communication that can bring transparency because of the distance between the government and the government access
No,
to the
we're
air.
in a session. We're gonna go find that one.
Do you want to go outside? I don't know if they're gonna use here or the place, or we can go down and take tea or something.
That sounds good. Like I said, it's really warm in here.
Yeah, I have a session there.
Oh, you have with them?
No.
उसके बाद
7 से 8 बजे के बाद तो नहीं होगा अभी
ये देख कौन रहा है, वीडियो कौन देख रहा है?
पता नहीं कौन सी वीडियो चल रही है नहीं आया Say this order.